Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit Pod Smash.
Where gaming goes to grab a beer.
Had to remember which show we were doing. I was like, newscast? Pod Smash? Weekly Wednesday live stream? What is this?
We are your hosts.
Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right. And this week we are going to take the opportunity to talk about parenting, and specifically talking about parental controls in video games. But as parents, we too are going to take the opportunity to talk about our parental philosophies as they relate to gaming. So it should be a good episode. If you are not a parent, it should still be interesting, because I was not a parent for a very long time and had no idea that my consoles had these features. And if you are a parent, hopefully you will figure out, you'll maybe gain some insight based on ours, or maybe be like, I don't ever want to make the mistakes they're making. So it should be a good episode all around. So stay tuned no matter what stage of life you are in. I also
like the idea, is if you're not a parent, how interesting this conversation can be, because our own individual experience. Video gaming is so new to the world that we're in our mid-30s. As children, we're kind of the pioneers. Like, our parents didn't even know what video games were.
Right.
And so anyway, if you were not a parent at all, and this sounds like it could be a boring topic, stick with us, because I know from my experience how we're going to talk about and how we're going to approach this is going to have a lot of cool, nostalgic feels to you, thinking about the past and the old days versus now. So,
and if you are a youngling, then I'll go ahead and let you down now. We're not going to try to teach you ways to get around this stuff.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah,
no interest in bypassing.
We are pro parental controls.
Yeah, but so cool. All right, cool. Well, that is what we're talking about tonight. But before we do that, we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking another Aslan beer.
Nice.
This one is called Stellar Parallax. It is a double India Pale Ale. It is 8.1%, and there's no descriptions on their can. That's the one. Aslan doesn't make junk. I think I've mentioned this last week, they're in contention for being my favorite brewery against Dogfish Head. Right now it's neck and neck. And this is an amazing IPA, a double IPA even. It has all of the things I would want when I read a double IPA on a can, with none of the bad stuff. And the bad stuff that you can get in some of these is like a funky taste or like a really high bitters that doesn't add to the complexity of the beer. This does have bitters. I mean, it's a double IPA. Come on. So it's going to be bitter. But it adds, it's awesome. It has body. It's contextually sound. It's balanced. And it tastes like a really solid double IPA. So I highly recommend Stellar Parallax. If you like hops and you're into that kind of beer, go get you one.
Nice. I am continuing to work my way through my 6-pack of this Midnight Brewing Rockville Red. It's an Irish red ale. It is delicious. If you are a fan of red ales, you might find it's a little bit sweeter than you're expecting, but it is, but I like it for that reason. So if you're not a huge fan of red ales because you don't like how dry they typically are, then you should try this one out because it is a little sweeter, but it's still got that malty, crispy, almost cider-like quality of a red ale that I like about red ales typically. So, cool. All right. No more need to talk about beer. What is going on this week in a non-gaming world for you? What's going on with you this week?
What is going on with me this week? I'm traveling again. Again. I am in full-blown training for a trail run that's out in King George, Virginia. It's a 14-mile race between two sheets. It's called Sheets to Sheets.
Wait, like sheets? Like the
gas stations.
Nice.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
Yep. And they're 14 miles apart. So that's on March 13th. So I think that will have already been done by the time this episode airs. But that's where I'm at right now. I had also had the privilege gaming-wise, and this is why this topic is also relevant to us, playing Bowser's Fury with my son co-op for the first time, and he's actually picking up the idea. Like, he's playing.
That's awesome.
We're playing co-op together, and he's actually holding his own. So super, super fun, monumentally mind-blowing, but now he's becoming... Like, he actually can, he's like, Daddy, we're video gamers. Like, yes, we are. Yes, we are.
That's awesome.
And it's so cool to, like, connect with him on that level. And, you know, video games are amazing. It's my passion. I've known them my entire life. And it's really, really cool to be able to pass that down to my son. So that's going on. And work is continuing to kick my butt. So
I've been upping my game playthrough of Luigi's Mansion that you got me for Christmas. And my son has been watching me. I've been playing it with him. And, but he likes to, while I'm playing, he likes to play Mario on my Game Boy Advance SP. Hold on, I have the exact, it's actually an NES. Mm-hmm. It's Super Mario Land, I think.
Yes.
For the Game Boy. And so he's been playing that on my Game Boy Advance while I've been playing Luigi's Mansion. It's actually kind of annoying because he wants the volume all the way up, so like I can barely hear Luigi's Mansion because I just hear do 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 do, and then do 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 do. Exactly.
I love that music.
And he doesn't actually play it though. He just likes pressing the buttons. While it's basically like handing him a fake video game controller, but he's more content with it because it is actually doing something, and he has a little screen that he can look at too. But he's still just watching me play Luigi's Mansion while sitting there with Mario, just jumping this over and over and over again, or pausing the game, or you hitting the left bumper and making it expand and then contract, turning the light on and off, pausing the game. He just he hits every button and does everything but actually play the game. But it's a start. He's 2, so it's a start. It's exactly. Yes. I'm hoping to get the if I just get him exposed to it. I was explaining to someone, I was like, if I just give it to him and let him go ham with it and don't care, like don't watch him, then one of these days I'm going to hear out of the corner of the room, do, 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 and I'll be like, wait a minute, you beat a level? So, that's how games, especially a game like Mario, which, we've talked about before, how it teaches you how to play it without ever having to like give a tutorial. Like he doesn't have to be able to read to learn how to play Mario. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that happens as well. But in the meantime, he's just happy to watch me play Luigi's Mansion while having a little thing to click and play himself. So it's been a blast. Yeah. Lots of Mario. Mario, it's like the great teacher of games to little children. But
it is. Yep.
Awesome. Anything else that you wanted to talk about? We have some time before we go to our next segment.
You want to update our audience on what do you learn? Have we updated?
Happy to do so. Yeah. I'll start, I guess. I am working my way through Code Vein, which is another symptom of my current Dark Souls-like fixation. It's great. It's funny that I bring this up because I actually was scrolling through one of my favorite video game reviewers, even though I frequently disagree with his very strong opinions on things, but he's a very entertaining personality. His name is Yahtzee, Bren Crawshaw from The Escapist magazine, and he does zero punctuation, I mean. Anyways, he has another show that he does with a fellow Escapist reviewer, and it's called Slightly Civil War or something like that, and they pick a topic, and they each take a different side and debate, basically, like old school debate format. Mm-hmm. And their topic this week was, should the Souls-like genre get a new name? And I'm like, yes, please. I'm so tired of calling them Souls-likes or Soulsborne games. Like, they need a proper genre description. So I'm 100% on the side of renaming that genre. So whenever they get around to it, I haven't actually watched it yet, but I saw it pop up on my feed as like that was the topic they were talking about. I was like, oh, I need to watch this as soon as I am available to do so.
It sounds like a fun DLC for us to do.
Right? Yeah. It might be a good one. Like, just in general, like genre. I mean, we've talked about genres before, but we haven't talked about genres that just need a redefinition. Anyways, but I have been fixated on that genre for a while, ever since playing Bloodborne back in the fall. So, Code Vein is in that genre. It is made by Bandai Namco, not From Software, and it is described as anime Dark Souls, and I'm having a blast with it. I'm about, I would say, somewhere roughly around halfway through with the platinum, but I still have a bit to do left on it, but it kind of scratches both that JRPG and Souls-like itch right now, so I'm digging it. I'm also working my way through Kingdoms of Amalur: The Re-Reckoning, which you bought me for Christmas in addition to Luigi's Mansion. I'm working kind of both of those as sort of side projects. Kingdoms of Amalur is a very long platinum with lots of requirements, so it's sort of like I'm chipping away at it over time, and that's really it. I'm kind of living in this weird, there's not really any games that are on my radar until April space in regards to new games. So just kind of trying to pass the time while also not trying to get invested in something like all 3 Dark Souls games, because I know that's going to be like a huge undertaking, and I don't want to be in the middle of that when suddenly games are coming my way. So I'm trying to like space out my games and save that for the next big drought, if you know what I mean. So
Wow, I've been pretty busy in the gaming front as well, as far as like trying to fill this gap of new games with stuff that I haven't had a chance to visit. But starting off, I started playing Destruction All-Stars, which is a new game. It was free in February for PlayStation Plus, and I picked it up, installed it, and started playing it and very quickly fell away. I was like, this is not for me. This is not, it was okay. It was cool to play something next gen again, being a PlayStation 5 exclusive. It had been a while because I'm finding that my PlayStation 5 is more like a PlayStation 4.75 or like a PlayStation Pro plus plus. Like it's not really getting any attention as far as actual PS5 games since Miles Morales. And so anyway, it was exciting to have a PlayStation 5 proper game. And you could tell it was polished. It had the ray traced reflections, and it looked gorgeous. And
you know, if you just ask, you can borrow Demon Souls.
I should, but that's such a commitment. So I bounced.
Only if you platinum it is it a commitment.
Destruction All-Stars is actually one of the examples of games that I talked about earlier this year when I was like, maybe I'll start playing stuff and not caring so much about trophies so that I have low trophy percentages on my wall and be okay with it. This is an example of that. I would have never started Destruction All-Stars without the intention of platinuming it, and I never do. So when I felt okay just bouncing. So I did. And I got there. I did the thing. It's done. Also free for February was Concrete Genie. And given that I had read online, it was a relatively short platinum. I did platinum that game with my son around. It is an amazing story. It's an awesome game about a kid who has, it's actually centered some deep emotional trauma of bullying and forgiveness and healing and growth. Amazing, like really deep stuff, super artsy, really cool game, and inspired my son to start drawing. So like he would grab paper and like, look, I drew a genie, and just like the Concrete Genie you do. So that was really, really cool. I loved it. I did platinum that. Circled back around to get the platinum in Cyberpunk finally. I had a few left to knock out, and I spent like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 hours grinding out the gigs in the New York City, a new Night City Police Department stuff, whatever. Ended up not hitting any of the bugs. So that was nice. Finished it and checked it off my list to get it out of the way for the best game that I'm playing right now, and that is Persona 5 Royal. And I'm so into this game. I'm chomping at the bit to get back to it. I'm traveling right now and can't play because I didn't bring my PlayStation 5. I do have a PlayStation Vita, so I've been playing that. And
Can't you remote play? Can you remote play?
I haven't
PS5?
set it up because I also didn't know. I know you can remote play PS4 and PS3, but I just got it like right before I went on travel and didn't have the time to sit down and like tweak it and mess with it and stuff. So anyway, Persona 5 Royal, I'm dying to get back to it. The music's amazing. I've been listening to the soundtrack, so and like the combat system is awesome. The exploration, it's so
stylish.
And,
I love it. Yep.
The story is just so engaging and compelling. I want to keep going, and I never want to stop playing when I start. It's like one more day, just one more day. But one more day turns into like 3 hours, and it's so cool because you play it day by day, and you have like a set of activities that you get to pick. Following a guide is actually extremely freeing because it tells you exactly what to do, and I'm not overwhelmed by the options. It's just like, oh, I'm going to do this today. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to watch this movie and read this book and do these things. And like, I love that. Some people would hate it, hate using a guide or say like I'm cheapening the experience. But I'm like, no, this is exactly what I want. And I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I was pleased to, I found the same was true for me using the guide. So.
And then Turok 1 and 2 came out on the PlayStation 4 finally. These are some of the most beloved shooters I've ever played on the Nintendo 64. And I absolutely loved it and 100%ed Turok, which I had no clue how short that game was because I've never beat the original Turok game all the way through. Like I always use cheats. I always use level select. I always did like all guns and vulnerability, like crazy infinite lives. And I would like jump around and have fun and goof off and fight all the bosses and stuff. But never have I done a full playthrough of Turok 1 until now. And now it's done. There's no platinum trophy, sadly, but I have all the trophies in the game, so it's 100%. And then I'm jumping onto the Vita on the side. I told you there's a lot. Like Termite's been busy. These are all like short experiences, by the way, except for Persona, which I just started. So then I have a PlayStation Vita, and I jumped into Lilymo Games, which is 49% owned by Colin Moriarty of what used to be IGN and Kind of Funny, but now he's a part of his own brand of shows called Last Stand Media. But Habroxia and Twin Breaker. Habroxia, I did platinum. It's a side-scrolling space shmup, and it's a really simple game to jump into, and I platinumed it in, it looks like 8 hours, but I only played it for like 2, maybe 3, so it was really short. And then I'm playing now Twin Breaker, a Sacred Symbols adventure. It is a block breaker game, which I have not played since like the NES era. So very new type of genre, indie, like pixel stuff. So yeah, I've been all over the place, filling
so much all over the place.
My gap. Yeah. And new releases with fun experiences. And like I said, all these that I've been playing are short or finishing up stuff, except for Persona 5, which I can't wait to get back into. And I'm only 14 hours in, so I have so much more to go.
Yeah, I was going to say about 10 times that amount.
Yeah.
that you've invested.
Yep.
Cool. All right, awesome. Well, those are some of the games that we've been playing recently, and as always, playing video games is our favorite thing, but...
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Favorite things is a segment of our show. It's the first segment of our show where we kind of update you on something that we have discovered or rediscovered or experienced this week that inspired us or excited us or was just the best part of our week, and we wanted to share it with you in hopes that you're inspired to go out and find your next favorite thing. Termite just laid a bunch of stuff on you, so I'll start. My favorite thing this week is something that really just clicked today as my favorite thing, though me and my wife started it over the weekend. But we wrapped up whatever show we had been watching, and we started Mr. Mayor, which is on Hulu. I don't think it's over. I think it's like a new show, and it's in the middle of its first season or whatever. So it's like 9 episodes in right now, but it's written by Tina Fey. It's basically... like it's, follows the mayor, like the newly elected mayor of Los Angeles post coronavirus. So they reference the coronavirus like in the first episode, and get it out of the way as like this happened in the past. This is what you're watching currently is like our future, but barely our future. So it's still our world and references to stuff, but it's really funny how they reference the year 2020 and all the like craziness that happened. But it's written by Tina Fey. Since it's local government though, it's basically Parks and Rec. Like the basic premise is like Parks and Rec.
Yes. Because
it's following a group of people in local government. And then it's got Ted Danson. He's the main character. He's the guy from The Good Place. He was the he's the one who runs The Good Place in season 1. But he's awesome. So he is so it's great. It's a great cast. It's a great, it's Tina Fey. I love Tina Fey, her writing. I loved Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I loved 30 Rock. So yeah, it's a great show. Me and my wife, like I just hit that episode. With every comedy, there's that one episode where you're like, okay, I'm in. I'm sold. Like I love these characters. I'm laughing out loud. I'm cracking up. And I just hit that episode tonight. So nice. I highly recommend checking out. If you're a fan of good comedy, highly recommend checking out Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor. My favorite thing is the Ghost of Tsushima Legends raid. I finally had my first console raiding experience ever, I believe. I did not raid with Destiny because I never got to the end. I never raided with the Division, and I didn't play any other online service game except for this one. So, for those of you who don't know, Ghost of Tsushima Legends is a multiplayer add-on that was completely free, added to the game, that allows you to grind through an online story mode as well as an online survival mode over and over and over again to build up a character and equip that character with gear and like establish a build and get to a certain level that allows you to do the raid. And it's a 4-player co-op experience that is extraordinarily difficult. And it requires great teamwork and coordination. We went through the first chapter, which online says 45 minutes to 90 minutes long. It took us 3 hours. So lots of trial and error. But when we finally did it, it was amazing. We had moments where we wanted to scream and yell, and we had moments of cheering and elation and joy and satisfaction. We finished chapter 1. There's still 2 more chapters.
Okay, so explain it to me. What is the moment-to-moment gameplay? Is it more like the story mode? Is it more like the horde mode? Or does it actually have bosses? Does it have mechanics? It
has lots of all of that.
Okay, all right.
So chapter 1 is broken into like 3 different segments. I don't have them all memorized, but like the first one you come across, there's these giant egg sacs, and you have to kill the enemies around the egg sacs because the bodies explode. And the bodies explode to crack the eggs, and out shows crystals. You have a time limit across this open area with which to destroy all the eggs to find 3 crystals. And you have to move the crystals from one area to another. And when you're carrying a crystal, you can't attack, and you walk real slow. So you have to get the other teammates to coordinate with you to kind of like football maneuver you from point A to point B to deliver the 3 crystals. And that's the easiest of the challenges. And you get overwhelmed very quickly by Oni and big things. And like, it's because of the time limit, it's very challenging. The last segment of that requires you to get what's called an ascension. And when you claim an ascension, it limits your character. It will remove an aspect of it. One of them is your abilities. One of them are your quick shots. One of them is your melee attacks, meaning you can only use your bow. And so there are 4 ascensions, and every single member of your team has to get one of them. When you claim an ascension, you have to get 8 kills with it, and it's permanent. And it lowers the entire team's health as if you were to die in survival. And that was the hardest one. It took us ridiculously long amounts of time for all 4 of us to work together because there's a time limit. Every time you die, you chunk away, the time gets faster and faster. So it required this whole dance. And this is like the simplest one. I just read the walkthrough for chapter 2, and it's insane. There's 3 pools of enemies, and you have to... I don't even understand. I just know you have to like coordinate 2 teams of 2, and 2 of them are in the middle pool, and then 2 are on the outside pools, and you have to like rotate through as certain things happen.
Wow, that sounds like my old WoW days.
Yeah, nuts. And so like every single time you see a character get to 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, you have to switch the characters out of the center pool and up to the side pools, and then the characters that are up on the side pools have to come down to the center pool and continue fighting. And you have to be completely self-sufficient. So you have to be able to take on hordes of enemies on your own without dying, because if you die, you disrupt the entire flow. So it's nuts, it's engaging, and it requires ridiculous amounts of communication, and it's so much fun. I've never had that much fun online with a console game in quite some time. Probably like Borderlands 3's release was the last time I had that much fun playing games online. So it's amazing, and I can't wait to continue playing.
Sweet. Awesome. Yep. That sounds fun, actually. I didn't know what to expect. I sort of just anticipated that it would be just like more horde mode, but maybe with like a story.
Different.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Well, then now you color me intrigued. I might have to go raise my key now so that I can join in the raid.
So the entire night was very engaging. I hope I sold you on it. It's amazing.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, great. That moves us to our next segment, which is DLC. DLC stands for downloadable content, and it is a segment of our show where we pick a fun little game, a little discussion that you wouldn't normally have about video games, and we just sort of talk about it for a little bit, break it down. And this, sometimes it's related to our main topic, sometimes it's not, but this week it is kind of related to our topic. I'm actually just kind of making it up as I go because I didn't prepare something ahead of time. So I'm going to ask an open-ended question of which video game character do you think would need parental controls the most as a child? Like, who should have had parental controls as a child? Like, they got into some stuff, clearly. And
Dante.
Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry, yes. Yep. Dante and Virgil, because Virgil probably got, like, Virgil's like always the bad guy, right? Like, Virgil is always somehow tied up with doing something evil and ends up being the bad guy in those games. And so clearly he was like extremized, like exposed to like some extremo groups online, alt-right or something like that, and just became a terrorist, a domestic terrorist. I'm with you. Yeah, Dante and Virgil for sure.
That's exactly it. So the troubled kids, like, clearly they've seen some things to learn from. Like, they do these crazy stylish things, maybe a little womanizing on the side. They've clearly experienced this stuff from like video games, thinking they can wall run and do all these flips and like all these stylized double pistols, shotgun, big giant swords swinging everywhere. They've clearly watched some anime and played some video games.
Since you have played Persona 5, I'm going to pull a Persona 5 reference and say Kamoshida. The first palace, the first bad guy.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, that dude has clearly been, because you get to go inside his mind, and because his mind is so twisted in regards to how he treats young women. That's all I'll say. Yep. That dude clearly was exposed to stuff in his early age that has warped his mind and personality, that he should have had some parental controls. He should have just had better parents in general, I think. But for sure, Kamoshida. Just some of the things that like you see inside his mind, you're like, you are messed up. And you have some deep-seated and deep-rooted flaws that can only trace back to childhood.
And the game does such a good job of telling his story and like all of the things that are going on around it, all the kids in the school and how all the rumors get spread and the manipulation and how like it's not just surfacey, it's not just like everything, all of the emotional baggage that goes in there, and like
how this, basically the students enable his behavior, like because they're also scared of him, and they're also like concerned with the image of the school and stuff like that. So they all just kind of, it's like everyone's complicit in the terrible things that go on, except for your main characters, and they have to go to such extreme lengths to expose him. Basically, it's great. It's so good.
Yep,
I love that game.
Oh yeah, it really is so good.
Persona 5 again. All right, cool. That's DLC. So
DLC.
if you have some ideas of characters from video games who should have had parental controls because of how terribly they turned out, or any fictional characters in general, general. It's more fictional. We don't want to hear about people in your life that probably should have had parental controls. Like we don't need that dirty baggage. So any fictional character, because it's just supposed to be a fun discussion, but character you think should have had some parental controls, more parental controls or parental guidance in their life to help prevent them from being the terrible people they were. We want to hear those thoughts and more. And Termite will tell you where you can share those thoughts with us.
You can find us at 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website, 80bitpodsmash.com, where you'll find links to all of our podcast platforms of your choice, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, etc. And you can also find our links to our social media outlets, and that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we have a Discord server as well. And the link is in all of our show notes. So if you really want to interact with us in a more responsive way, instead of just passively listening to us, you can jump in and engage with our audience across any of our social media outlets. Make sure you subscribe and like across those things so that you can be made aware, of what we're doing as we do it. And be on the cutting edge of 80-bit Pod Smash content. When we go live randomly or whenever we tweet something, you'll be there to read it and see it and engage on the comment sections of those with our awesome audience. We would love to have you involved and hear what you have to think about parental controls. So jump in.
Fantastic. All right. Well, then, yeah, that's our topic tonight. We are talking about parental controls. Not only are we talking about the technology and the feature of parental controls, but we're broadening that out and talking about the idea of the philosophy around a parent deciding how, when, why, what their kid does in relation to their gaming consoles or their gaming environments. And yeah, just the general idea of parental control on gaming, not just the technology itself, not just the actual features, but yeah, parental philosophies in general. So yeah, parenting and gaming is kind of another way you could view this topic. We've talked about like fatherhood in games before. We've talked about the ESRB. So we've had some of these adjacent topics. So some of the concepts that we bring up may sound familiar, but I don't think we've done a full episode on just the idea of like being a parent and then trying to control your kids' gaming experiences. So we'll talk about that and whether or not it should be done.
So. And I want to cater to this. Like, I know this is my perspective. This is how Termite looks at it. And it's a little bit of a spoiler for later when we talk about our own parental ideas or ideologies here. But I want to like center this around, we're not just going to have technophobia and we're not going to just like attack video games as a medium or like say it's all bad.
Of course not. Anybody who's listened to our show up to this point would never expect that from us. But yeah, you're right. It is. Yeah. It is 100% something that we're in support of our kids playing games, and we are encouraging of that because we have had much value from it growing up in our lives. And like you said, we are the first generation of gaming parents. Maybe one could say Generation X is the first generation of gaming parents, but we're hot on their heels. Mm-hmm. We grew up with it. It's still something that is marketed towards us, and it's still something that we get a lot. We didn't grow out of it like our parents predicted. In fact, gaming grew up with us. Not the other way around. So
exactly.
We are the first generation of parents who have to figure this out, and so we're going to talk about it and our experiences with it.
So. The rest of my thought. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I'm 100%. I'm glad. It sounded like I was attacking you, but no, I was like, no, I was 100% backing that up because I was like, yeah, 100% we're going to be supportive of gaming. So we're going to try to figure it out together. I think
the other side of that coin is I want to be 100% supportive of other parents. And what I wanted to get at was that every parent needs to know their kid and knows the boundaries of their kid's psyche and their personality and their emotional capacity. And I don't want to come across as judgmental. Our way is not your way. This is simply a discussion about the tools at hand to help parents do what they need to do. And we will definitely contrast how I was raised with how I intend to raise my kids. And it will be I say contrast on purpose because it will be very different. But it doesn't mean that my parents were wrong. I'm not bashing my parents, and I'm not going to bash any parent that listens to this that does something different. Whether you're super, super strict and you are technophobic, I do want to plea with you to kind of open that box and engage with your child and actually jump in and experience technology. But that's not really our audience. I don't think anybody's in that camp.
Right.
So on the other side of the coin is I also don't think that kids can just run free online. It's kind of dangerous. So like catering to you guys and gals, like what is best for your children is different for what's best for our children.
Right. Your children and your family, because every human being is different. You're different parents than we are. Your kids are different kids than our kids. 100%. Yeah. Yes. And we don't, again, we both have kids that are under the age of 10, under the age, your oldest is 6, right?
He'll be 6 this year.
He'll be 6 this year. Yeah. Okay. So like very, very young children is what we have experience with right now. So who knows? And we'll talk about it because I have a whole question here about how you think your ideas are going to change as your kids get older. Because parents of teens, like you're going through a whole different set of things than we are right now. So God be with you. But we were teenagers once, so maybe we can shed some light on what your kid may be experiencing. So cool. All right. Well, all those caveats aside, 30 minutes into the show, let's talk about what we came here to talk about. So what are parental controls? What's the history of parental controls? And what are some of these features that are offered by the technology of parental controls? Have you
Wikipedia'd parental controls? Do you have a definition?
I don't. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to more or less wing this one because it's not like there's some kind of like, it's not like blockchain technology or anything that drives this. It really is simple programming. Yeah. So it's just something that's
parental
built
controls
in.
Then in that case, I'm winging it as well. It's just like a way of establishing some sort of boundaries for your children that you can have control over as a parent. And so you can dial it to be as strict as you need it to, or you can loosen the restrictions, or you can not have them at all. But there are tools that are in place inherently in the software that kids are engaging with that allow parents to track, monitor, and control basically what their kids are doing.
Yeah, and there's like there's third-party parental controls. I would even go as far to say as setting up credit card alerts are parental controls.
Yep.
I would go as far to say the ESRB is a parental control device. It is not necessarily a piece of software. It is an organization that sits there and puts, but in the same way that ratings, the whole purpose of them is so that parents can decide whether or not they want to restrict their kids from seeing it or whether or not they want to somehow, engage with the content more. So anyways, that's sort of a broad parental control idea there. And that's why we're talking about it in a broad sense. So, cool. So in regards to the history of parental controls, like again, it's sort of loosey-goosey because it is so broad of a topic, but I think consoles started if we're talking about console gaming, consoles began to include more parental controls kind of alongside the internet. As the internet began to be implemented into consoles, parental controls kind of came on board as well.
Yeah, it was more of a societal thing before that, like when you had Super Nintendo and Nintendo, and kind of like Mortal Kombat in the early 90s, ESRB ratings came out. There was a little rating on the box. Like that was it. You could throw in any game to your Super Nintendo or your Sega Genesis or your N64, PlayStation, and there would be no software tools available to you to restrict or do anything with it. It was just you as a parent had to bear the brunt of all of it. It was very manual and granular. Now, as consoles have evolved into the internet with 2002-ish timeframe with Xbox Live and like consoles becoming online entities, and then like the 360 era PS3 where the consoles exist entirely online, we started to see like more software control baked into it, kind of like DVD players when they had like little parental controls with the ratings that were inherent to the discs. You could control,
I mean PCs have had parental controls for a while, like PCs and Macs, just personal computers in general have had parental controls for a long time. Early phones had parental controls. And I remember, like, did you ever have a TV with TV Guardian on it?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No.
I did because I grew up in a religious household. TV Guardian was a parental control feature for your television where it would basically like it would just mute the sound anytime it would read the closed captionings and then mute out anytime a cuss word was on there. And I think you could select there's some very rudimentary AI in there that would like you could kind of select what kinds of things, but it wasn't specific enough. And to the point where like a character would just be it would even be like a religious movie, and all of the gods in the religious movie, like anytime a character would utter God, it would like mute it. It was very very because it was like it didn't understand the context, right? It just was like, this is a bad word, so it muted out. It was ridiculous. But yes,
I bet 10 Commandments was lit.
Exactly. So anyways, that's just sort of some early examples of parental controls that I remember experiencing in my life. But yeah, cool. So what are some of these features?
Features?
Yeah, let's run through features.
So we already touched about like the non-technology ones through transparency of the content, and that's kind of ESRB or any sort of thing where the creator tells the parents what is on this. It could be right at the beginning. Here's the on-screen splash screen. We see this a lot in like Netflix and Disney Plus. It's like, oh, this contains cussing, etc. So that's kind of like the transparency of the content creator out there. That's not really software. But then we have like online protection of varying degrees. You can block all online access across the console, like the video game console. You just never connect online. You can block aspects of that. You can choose like what's visible on your child's profile through privacy settings? Can friends only see their screen name? Are they available to be added or pinged to the general public? Can someone just send your son or your daughter a message from anywhere, or do they have to be friends first? You can block purchases online, like you were talking about with credit card blocking. That's a form of parental controls. You can block just voice chat, so you can allow your child to do anything you want they want on the internet, but voice chat. You can also block social media posts, so like sharing of screenshots and content, also hiding the social media accounts and access.
Yeah, in regards to that, you can also, like, if you want your kid to be able to play online games and have all these features available to them, but not access a web browser for obvious reasons to parents.
Yeah.
You can even just shut down. I mean, I know that like the Switch, and I think the Switch has it, or the Switch not have a web browser. Maybe it was the Wii U I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Wii U, that's what it was. Yeah, the Wii U, I know you could say just straight up block the web browser. PlayStation also has that functionality where it's just like it treats the web browser as a whole different thing that you can just completely block access to. So that was, carry on.
And then there's like just like barriers or like boundaries. Control what time of day your child is allowed to play, or how long their play sessions are allowed to last. And then you can like block bedtimes. You can set bedtimes so that after certain times of day, this isn't going to happen. Yeah,
so they just sneak a phone into their bed and try to PS remote play into your PlayStation. Haha, sucker. You can't play at midnight. You can't even log in.
I guess it's, speaking of that, it's kind of implied that these parental controls usually have some sort of password that only the parent knows. So guarding that and knowing what the PIN is or whatever password that is.
Changing it frequently. That's something exactly. That here's my advice as someone who works in IT. Basic account security means that you should be changing your password or your PIN frequently. And I don't think enough parents do that, because your kid will probably find out whatever your current iteration is through sneaky means eventually. So do what you need to do. Get LastPass on your phone or any number of password management tools. And change that thing up frequently. That's a big one. But yeah, there's also accountability features, and you know these you know there's lots of implications loaded in that word to some people, but it really is just the basic definition of it is like it will alert you when your kid does something or when anyone does something or particular actions on your account or on your console, and that could be even just like, you know, alerting you to when a login happens, or alerting you to when a purchase happens, or alerting you to certain websites that have been browsed to and stuff like that. So
yeah, and because of like predatory practices on the internet where people are messaging children and sending them horrible things, bad words and graphics, there's even like this part of accountability allows you to go back and look at the message history and you can see the log of who they're chatting with, what they've received, what they're sending, what they browse, how long they're playing, etc. Like all that's kind of Xbox is really pushing this with Xbox Family, and Nintendo has a version of that on their app, the Parental Control app for the Switch as well.
All right, awesome. So let's talk a little bit about why, for someone, again, for maybe some of the non-parents out there, or maybe some of the more kind of lax parents out there, why are parental control, there might be a criticism of it like, well, I don't want to shelter my kid. I want my kid to be, I want my kid to have access to, some of the world and what the real world is like. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that premise, but I'm sure there are parents out there who feel that way, and I'm sure there are non-parents out there who feel that way as well. Like, why would you shelter your kids like that? So with that criticism in mind, why are parental controls valuable for more than just sheltering kids? What are some of the other additional benefits of potentially restricting some of your kids' access to things?
I think buried in this question is kind of maybe why would you want to do this, and how is it different from other parental controls? There's this awesome article on The Guardian from January of 2020, and the headline is "Putting consoles on your kids' gaming. Putting consoles on your kids' gaming is a key part of being a parent." I don't know. It's a weird headline.
Putting controls on your kids' gaming?
Thank you. I can't read. Putting controls on your kids' gaming is a key part of being a parent. So go check that article out. It's a much longer article, but there's a paragraph towards the end that I want to use to kind of answer this question. Our kids aren't living in the same world as us. Tried as it might be, the phrase digital natives is accurate. Children play, communicate, flirt, share, organize, and understand the world through devices. Games such as Fortnite and Minecraft are social venues, like the park, like the back of the bike sheds, or the youth club, or that wall outside the gas station. And we can't help them navigate these spaces if we remain technological agoraphobics. So it's talking about technophobia and stuff, but that's not the point. What I want to get at is the paradigm has fundamentally changed. Kids are experiencing the world through video games and technology in a way that me and older than me parents have never understood the world. And so restricting these things are just as important as establishing rules about crossing the road at the right time or putting on a seatbelt or don't talk to strangers. Like these things that we were taught when we were children in the real world were put in place to protect us from the dangers of the real world.
Right, from predators, from
predators.
From the aspect of the fact that, like, you know, no matter how much we want to pretend, like, maybe not pretend, but no matter how much we may want the world to be a certain way, and no matter how much we want people to take responsibility for, you know, their own, you know, bullcrap and deal with it, that's not the real world. Like, that is not, you know, we, as parents, you live in this weird in between of being like, you know, you have your ideals of the way the world should be. You know, obviously men should not treat women a certain way, but men do treat women a certain way. So you still have to teach your daughter, you know what I mean? Like, so you still have to teach your daughters to know that and recognize that and protect themselves. And that doesn't necessarily mean being a prude, doesn't necessarily mean being no fun. But it does mean equipping them with certain wisdom, because again, people suck. And so, the same is true for sons, you know, for your boys as well. And the same is true for just kids in general, engaging in a world that is full of people who would be hostile to them given the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So
all of that was to say that these restrictions that we're putting on our kids online with parental controls and video games is analogous to the restrictions that were put on us that don't seem like, as the article mentions the word trite, it's almost like my generation and older look at the online interactions or like video games as like this toy or like this thing you play with. It's not real. But no, it's actually way more meaningful and more real to our children than what is really known. And I think you and I are in a unique position where, as kind of the older generation of gamers, we understand that and we get the online presence, we get the social aspect of gaming, and we understand sort of closer to what
we were called all that. We know the stress, the just emotional toll that like being yelled at online over a game takes on a mind, because we lived through it. Yep. Both of us have been cussed out in online games before.
Oh yes,
100%,
big time.
And we know how much it sucks to be that. Both of us have probably. I can't speak for you. I know for myself, I cussed people out online before in my younger days, and I'm not proud of it. And it's not. I'm sure that was not fun for the people who experienced it. It's just, it's a whole different layer of emotional well-being. But that's, you know, when I phrased this question, when I wrote this question, I had another thought in mind, which is just like the other aspect of parental controls that make them incredibly valuable tools to utilize are the financial ones. Like, there are so many stories, heartbreaking stories out there of like kids who just, they got a hold of their parents' credit card and they just went on a spending spree on freaking Farmville or Fortnite. Yeah, exactly. And they just bought stuff and racked up credit card charges, and the parents were none the wiser until they got the bill. And at that point it was like, the credit card company is like, well, as far as we're concerned, you authorized these charges because your card was used for the charges. And they can do nothing about it. And, you know, people's lives, financial lives can get ruined by, you know, I'll use the term dumb kid, meaning that completely as just the simple fact that like the kid doesn't know any better and the kid doesn't have any impulse control because it's a kid. Not his fault. He's not a bad kid. He just doesn't know enough and has no impulse control. And the game is designed in such a way to get him to want to buy these things. The game is designed in a way to be a predator in and of itself at that point. And just so having parental controls around, you know, alerting you on purchases, restricting purchases. Some of these features for the PlayStation, I know for sure, allows you to create spending limits where the kid can't, or the user that you put the spending limits on cannot purchase beyond, like if they reach the spending limit, they can't spend anymore. So that's if you want to give your kid a budget to allow them to game with. That's fine, but you know, you want to be smart about how you allow the child or the young person to engage with purchases as well. Or you may want to lock that down altogether. Maybe you want me, you know, because I'm the kind of parent where I'm like, nope, if you want a game, you come to me and ask me if you want a game, and I will.
Purchase, every single one.
Exactly. Yeah, we're probably on the same boat in regards to that. But you know, maybe physical copies are a different story, but those are already restricted in regards to the kid already won't be able to buy something if they aren't a certain age. So yeah, that that's a little bit easier of something to in my mind, that's something where I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd be okay with my kid doing that, but definitely not just like going on the PlayStation Store and buying it. Like, no. that's cut off altogether.
Yep.
So that's good. That's kind of the two big reasons I agree. I would say that it's more than just trying to be a prude and being like, well, I don't want my kids seeing blood and gore. I don't want my kids seeing certain adult content, adult adjacent content. It's more than that. It's more about like making sure they are protected from people who would do them emotional or physical harm, and then also protecting them from poor impulse control doing damage to your financial situation as a family. So, and
then protecting your children from experiencing emotional depth beyond their capacity with like mature content in storytelling or in like you said, gore or nudity or etc. Like, kids aren't supposed to see those things. And in the movie industry, we guarded that with rated R movies. Right. In the video game industry, we have the rating system. We have ID checks when you purchase these games, and you can also put those checks into the software itself so that you can physically, like, you cannot launch this game. This game is rated M for mature on an account that is logged in right now for a 7-year-old, and that 7-year-old cannot launch any title that's rated mature at all, period, which is great. Like, it's inherent. And I wouldn't
necessarily say, and this kind of segues us nicely into what are our parental philosophies towards gaming, because I wouldn't necessarily say that they shouldn't see those things. I would say they should be carefully guided into those things. They should they shouldn't see those things out of context, just on their own, without any way of without being equipped in any way to deal with what they're seeing and what they're consuming. Now, again, I say that, and you may be thinking, what, you're going to let your kids just see what it's like? No. Because this kind of goes into like, so the next question is, what are your parental philosophies towards gaming, and how do you think that you will adapt to the gaming wants and needs of your kids as they get older? So there's the kind of qualifying aspect there is like, my son's going to be able to have that, what you use the word capacity, and I love that word. He's going to have the capacity to be able to deal with things as he gets older, a lot sooner than society says so in regards to what, age restrictions on movies are, or age restrictions on things like, so I for a long time said that, like, I've had friends who were exposed to alcohol by their parents way before they were 21. And that was incredibly valuable. They talk about how valuable that was to them because they were, it wasn't just some party where, they snuck, they told their parents they were going to just have a quiet night with their friends playing video games, and then ended up like at a party getting peer pressured into drinking the first, like, that context of having their parents be like, I'm going to destigmatize this, and let, the government says you can't have this till 21, but in our house, in our home, here, have a drink with me. Let me teach you about this. Let's here, have a couple so that you can start to understand your limits. So things like that are like, again, it's the same idea with video games. To me, that's one of my first parental philosophies is like, as my kid gets older, he may not be the age for M for mature, but I might sit through and play God of War with him. And even though it's rated M, and talk about, okay, what are you seeing? Like, what are you seeing? How do you feel about this? Like, those are important, valuable conversations for parents to have with kids, because, kids and young people, adolescents or whatever, they literally don't have the ability to form empathy yet. Like, the empathy part of their brains don't fully form until they're like 18, and they don't have the ability to like truly process those things. So giving them a language of emotions, like, how did that make you feel? What are the emotions you're feeling right now? Those are incredibly like crucial parts of like my parental philosophy of being like having conversations with your kid, and also teaching them, I grew up where it was like, you just don't talk about certain things. You don't ask your parents certain things because you're going to get in trouble if you ask them. And I want to totally not have that with my kids. I want to be able to say, you can ask me anything and I won't judge you. I won't make you feel bad. I might even explain to you why a certain joke that you heard at school is funny. Why do the kids think it's funny? And if it's not funny, we can talk about why it's not funny. But if it is funny, like there are certain words and phrases and ideas that are kind of amusing. We can talk about why they're funny, and we can talk about why, just removing that kind of stigma of being like, I don't want to talk to my parents about this because I feel like I'm going to get in trouble. Like, it's the same thing with gaming. It's like make them don't feel like that they're bad or shameful for wanting to play Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat's fun as crap. Like, let's talk about it. And then let's also talk about how we shouldn't let some of this stuff negatively impact us, because you don't have the ability to necessarily compartmentalize, when someone smashes their face into someone and their head explodes. You may not have the capacity to truly compartmentalize that from like, this is entertainment and fun, and I should not do this to another person or want to do this to another person. You know what I mean? Like, those are important conversations to have. You have to kind of help your kids do that. And if you just remove it from them entirely. You're going to make it something that's taboo and therefore desirable. Or when they do encounter that stuff in the real world, they're not going to know how to do that because you've never talked to them about it.
Yep.
They'll have to figure it out for themselves, like many ways you and I had to. So, cool.
And you and I had very, very, very different upbringings. I was not raised in a religious household, and my parents did not know anything about what video games could offer or what they were at all. Like, to my parents, video games were just toys, and it was something that they could leverage to kind of get some peace and freedom by letting us play. I had a TV and video game consoles in my room, and it had no restrictions on them whatsoever. I could watch all the cable TV I wanted at any hour of the day, and I could play any video game I wanted through the video game rental store. I mean, it was kind of controlled by money, which my parents had control over, but my parents didn't know what the games were. So I was playing Mortal Kombat 2 in the 3rd grade, where I was uppercutting people into spikes with blood spraying everywhere, ripping spines and hearts out at 3 years old. Or I'm sorry, how old are you in 3rd grade? 8? At 8 years old. With no abandon. The only restrictions that were put on me was that my grades better be good, and I better be respectful to all adults, and I better follow the rules and do what I'm told and do my chores at home. And I did all that stuff. I checked all those boxes. I crushed it, and I was able to fully enjoy like unrestricted, unfettered access to video games and TV. And I even had a VCR in my room too, so I could like rent movies. Now that was a little bit more like restricted because my parents knew movies and they knew what was problematic and what wasn't. And so like that was a little bit more gate controlled than the video games were because of the ignorance of my parents. Ignorance in the literal sense. Like they just didn't know. So like that was my upbringing, and I kind of want to pass that forward in a way. I want to take the benefits of that. Like everything you just highlighted about what you just said, I gained the benefits of that, and my parents didn't even know it because my parents did counsel me in ways that were like, these video games are fake. So when they would see me like want to play Mortal Kombat with my friends, they're like, hold on a minute. They're fighting in a video game. That's a video game. That's fake. You don't do that in real life. You don't hurt people. Defending yourself is one thing, but don't hurt people. And so like that clicked, like that affected me, and it helped me process and compartmentalize like, oh, okay, running around with an automatic shotgun and blasting raptors in the face is a video game. And that's Turok, by the way. And like that's separate from like, guns are extremely violent and very dangerous, and they're meant with the intent, or they're built with the intent to kill. Like that's what they are. And so in real life,
and
I
raptors have never ever hurt you before, so please leave the poor raptors alone.
I mean, of course, that like then goes into Grand Theft Auto and like the later like PlayStation 2 era, where I'm playing games like Onimusha and Resident Evil, and I'm seeing much more bloody and more realistic content. And like, but the foundations of that stuff started when I was in elementary school, and how even though my parents didn't really know what I was experiencing, they still had enough knowledge to like walk me through that based on, it was very reactionary, so they could be criticized for that too. And like I said, I'm against criticism. This is an inclusive podcast.
Oh yeah,
so
for
like,
sure. Well, and like, I don't know, I think that like
everyone makes mistakes. Maybe that was theirs. I don't know. But I'm just saying like what you want to do with your children, I kind of had that, and I can speak to the benefits of that.
Yeah,
I was allowed to drink alcohol before I was 21 at my parents' house when they threw parties. And they're like, well, here's a beer. This is what it does to you. And like, yeah, it kind of removed that taboo.
Yeah, and I'm not throwing shades on my parents either. Like they made the choices they made, and for the most part, they turned out great. Like, obviously, I'm not, sitting on a chair made of human skulls right now, nor am I some deviant, just complete deviant in regards to any of my behaviors or anything like that. I'm a pretty normal guy, and I'm pretty well adjusted, all things considered. So my parents clearly did something right, even in regards to video games. I do still think there's a lot of benefit to exactly what we are talking about here, which is the sort of idea of like
controlled exposure.
Yeah, controlled exposure, and also guiding, having good conversations, just constant communication. In any relationship is so important. And I'm not some king of communication. I have my own hangups with that, but like it's something that I'm going to want to strive for as my kids get older and are able to have conversations. But all things considered, kids are smart, and kids, no kid is raised in a vacuum. So like there's all kinds of social pressures. There's school and peers and stuff like that, as much as, a lot of people rag on peer pressure for contributing to bad behaviors, and they do, there's also a lot of peer pressure that contributes to good behaviors and normalizing behaviors. If your kid walks in on a train full of, squirrel skulls, like dragging behind their back, that they're going to get, so some of that's going to get socialized out of them, if you know what I mean. Like, if they are normal and well adjusted and don't have any, crazy divergent mental behaviors, which can be discussed in therapy and stuff like that. And all that's a whole different can of worms. But nevertheless, like a normal kid's going to have social pressures that will also help adjust some of their behaviors. And then furthermore, like I said, kids for the most part are smart, and they're way smarter than we as adults give them credit for. And they'll figure most of the stuff out on their own as well. No matter what they're exposed to, they will generally figure it out and figure out how to compensate for any damage done. But it's still important, you know what I mean? You still want to minimize that, and you want to, you know, I think any parent would want, like, no parent who actually has a great affection and love for their kid would be like, do you want to make it harder for your kid? Like, no, you want to make things easier for your kid than you had it. So the ideal that we're describing here is one of, like, you want your kid to have as many advantages as they can. So having conversations about what they're being exposed to in games and what you're, you know, but then also giving them the opportunity and giving them some freedom more in a controlled way over time is also valuable in helping them kind of figure it out and sort through it, and giving them tools to help them sort through it. Even just language. Like, that's what I'm getting at, is like giving them the words to say. I shouldn't say we, I should say, for me, I was never taught like emotional language in regards to like how to give, you know, I would have feelings and I wouldn't know how to give words to those feelings. So I couldn't communicate those feelings to others. God forbid I would never do that anyways. Because I wouldn't feel safe doing
you can't have emotions.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So even just giving them, be like, hey, there's a difference. There's a reason why we have different words for frustrated versus just enraged. You know what I mean? Like those are, a kid might just be generally frustrated about something, but express it in rage because they don't know that there's a difference between those two emotions. They're just like, I just feel this anger and I need to do something about it. So they chuck their controller against the wall. Totally am guilty of that. I threw my controller at Killer Instinct. I remember I have a very blatant memory as a young, like, adolescent chucking my N64 controller at my CRT monitor while playing Killer Instinct, and nothing happening. Both things were solidly made enough that neither of them broke. It's great. But still, like, that's not an appropriate response. So, just being able to, like, we have this weird thing in our brains where if we have words for things, we're better able to deal with those things. And so giving your kid, like, an emotional language to be able to, like, sort out, like, and being able to teach them how to say, like, yeah, you know what? It's okay that I don't want to play this game. It's okay that I tried it out and don't want to play it. Even though my friends are telling me that, like, it's the best game ever and I should love it. It's okay to have a different opinion on it. Like, kids don't know how to do that because they just think that they think there's something wrong with them if they don't like it, and they try to force themselves to like things. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, you know, it's okay. Being able to, like, help them, guide them through that and be like, it's totally fine. It's totally normal for all your friends to be like, Assassin's Creed is the greatest franchise of all time, and you be like, this is kind of garbage. I don't care for it. So
being able to, like, walk your kids through what they're feeling, and really just knowing they have a different life worldview than we will ever have, because we grew up in an age where we remember prior to the internet being what it is today. They don't. And so, like, going back to circling back to that Guardian article about really learning how your kids are experiencing the world. Like, it's COVID. My son is doing at home through live video chat, internet school. Like, that was unheard of, completely unheard of when I was a kid. And so he's experiencing and interacting with teachers and students in a way that is totally foreign to even I'm an adult, and I'm, like, have my own struggles with doing that in workplace and, like, in my life. Imagine, well, kids are a lot more adaptable and, like, can handle that kind of stuff. Like you were saying, they're smarter and more capable than we think. But that's them. And so when they experience a desire to interact with something on the internet, it's better to have a more inclusive view and control and talk and engage that thing instead of just fearing it and saying, no, you can't have it. And so, you know, going back to sheltering kids, especially, it's so important to not shelter children from the internet, because it is literally their life. That's their whole life.
Yep. You have to teach them how to navigate it is more important. Yep. It's like saying, here's a map and a compass. Now go out into the woods where you need to make your living, as opposed to saying, don't go into the woods at all.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, you know, I had other questions on here, and I wanted to talk about the ESRB a little bit, but we've kind of reached our time, and I think we've reached a pretty good stopping point here. Yeah. So pretty natural. So that's good. That means the conversation was engaging enough for us to just take it and run with it. So, cool. Well, then we want to hear your thoughts on parenting and parental philosophies and parental controls, and what parental controls you have found useful as a parent, or what parental controls you maybe imagine yourself would be useful if you were a parent, if you're not. And what are some parental controls that you experienced as a kid, like maybe your parents put on you? Or what parental controls you wish your parents hadn't put on you, or you wish they aren't. Those
are the things I want to hear about the most. I want to hear from kids that are slightly younger than me, like Gen Zers, I want to know how Gen Zers live right now. I'm all about what parental controls did you Gen Z kids have on you?
Yeah.
Because like, your parents were Gen Xers.
What was like overboard? Yeah, what was like overboard parental controls that you're just
my parents were baby boomers who knew zero about technology. The Gen Xers at least like grew up in the 80s, late 70s, and they know technology and have like a different level. And I want to know that.
Yeah, there are kids listening to us here who have millennial parents that are our age too. So let's we want to hear about that too. So what was it like? Yeah. So cool. All those thoughts and more, you can share them with us. Again, all the places Termite told you earlier, but he will run through them again very briefly. To close us out.
80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website. Links to all of our podcast platforms as well as our social media outlets: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Reddit. We're everywhere. There's a link to our Discord server as well in all of our show notes. But don't forget about our Twitch channel, where you can find us live every Monday and Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern. Monday night is a news show where we run you through weekly news, and Wednesday is a weekly live stream of whatever game we're digging. We will usually alternate between the two of us playing something and engaging over it, talking about the game, the developer, the studio, as well as what we're doing and why we like it. And engaging with the audience, which is the most important thing. So make sure you check out twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash and 80bitpodsmash.com. Click all those likes and subscribes and share us with your friends to grow our audience.
Awesome. So next week we are going to continue our series on Soul in the console, and where we go through. We've been going through each of the major manufacturers and their consoles that they are known for, and doing a deep dive on each one, talking about the specs, the hardware, talking about its legacy and impact, and
the controller, and definitive games.
And so next week we will be continuing with Microsoft's Xbox 360. So we've done the Xbox, so now we'll be doing the Xbox 360. So
the advent of the HD era.
Oh yeah,
we're going to 1080p, baby.
So yeah, that's to look forward to, and we'll see you then, March 22nd.
See you next week.